Hey everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everybody to Satsang with G. Good to have you all. Sound is good. Sound is good. Excellent. Sound is good. Picture is good. Everyone can hear me okay. I'm sure you'll say something if I can't. As always, I invite you all to just say hello, your name, where you're watching from, and if this is your first time in Satsang, that's always useful for me to know. And if you've ever actually had any prior experience with non-dual teachings, I've had some people that have a meetup group last Saturday or a week before, I think. Somebody who had just come. It was a spiritual group. They'd never had any exposure to non-dual teachings whatsoever. So in addition, if you would all be so kind as to press the little happy button, the little thumbs up button, and share it as well to help draw more people in to this kind of a conversation. As you know, it's what I love to do most. I teach courses on a variety of different subjects. I've got one coming up on the chakras. It's starting, well, actually, not this week, but the following week. I had to delay it 2 weeks to get it together, sending out the wrong emails and stuff. And but this forum, this ancient forum of satsang, where we just gather as a community to examine ourselves, our own hearts, our own experience of our own life, for the purpose of knowing who we really are. The beautiful thing is that the truth of you can never, ever, ever not be the truth of you. And the truth of you is true whether you believe it or not, whether anybody else believes it or not. That's the wonder of truth. It is self-sustained. It does not depend upon beliefs. It does not depend upon some hierarchy, some institution, some group of people that say this is correct or this is incorrect. It stands permanent forever. Now that's a powerful insight, because truth is something that's changeless. It's timeless. It has no beginning and end. It has no birth or death. Now, if you really ponder that, it opens the possibility up to you that the truth of you is deathless. It was never born. It's never going to die. That the truth of you is there to be discovered by you. Now, isn't that wondrous? Isn't that just wondrous to ponder? The truth of your being cannot be lost. It can only be hidden, veiled. Well, what veils it? Obviously, the only thing that would veil the truth would be something false, the believing of something that isn't true. But the thing about a belief is it requires somebody to believe in it in order for it to be mistaken for the truth. Whereas the truth is self-existent and self-sustaining. A belief is very much other-sustained. Somebody has to hold that belief. And the moment the belief is seen as a belief, it vanishes. But what can see a belief as a belief? Another belief? The only thing that can recognize that a belief is a belief is the truth. You see, the truth is not a truth about you. That's kind of the human knowledge approach to it. The truth is you. I don't want to know about myself. I want to know me. The religious person, there's a marked difference between the kind of religious person that wants to know about God and has lots of information, lives their life accordingly, and makes a good relationship, and somebody who wants to know God. The way you'd know, it's the difference between, I could tell you all about an orange, how sweet it is, how wonderful it is, how you can make little slices and the scent gets in your hand and it's really wonderful. And it means absolutely nothing. But hand somebody an orange and let them taste it directly. Now they know the orange. Before they know about the orange, but now they know the orange. That's what we want in our relationships with another. I don't want to know about the other. I want to know them. I want to experience them in all the ways that are possible. That's truth. That's the truth approach to knowledge, to true knowing, where knowing and being are inseparable. Satsang means communion with truth. Not an abstract truth about something, but a very real, intimate, visceral truth of something. The truth of you. Satsang is a communion with this truth. And, the word guru in Sanskrit simply means one who dissolves darkness. That's it. So every pointer that I give you that lands, every pointer that comes to me to speak is coming from truth. If it wasn't, it couldn't lead to truth. It could only lead to another thing. So truth is always speaking. Truth is always hearing. The practice, for lack of a better word, the intent of the human being and the great blessing of being born a human being is to distinguish the truth that is the true self, the true mind, true being, true everything, from the illusion, the mirage, the creations of mind. The thing about beliefs is, if they are believed, they get manifested as form. I still get a lot of questions, sometimes not as much in satsang, but in other courses and the like, about manifesting, kind of the residual of the whole fervor around the law of attraction and this movie, The Secret, and all of that. And it's kind of a watered down version of it. Because it's true. If I believe something, I literally believe it into existence. Now, if I just take that little bit of knowledge halfway, what I'm going to want to do then is I'm going to want to be changing my thoughts and raising my vibration, right? So that I can get the things that I really want, or the things I feel I really need, or more accurately, the things I feel I have to have in order to feel happy and safe. That's only taking that insight part way. In satsang, we want to take it the whole way. The only thing that can actually overturn a belief is the truth, right? The false can only be overturned by the truth. Anything else would just be a replacement falsity. So we want to be putting our attention on the place at the root of the tree. We want to go right to the essence. We want to go to the truth of who we are. And so I just point people back, not to some words, not to some description, not to some concept, not to some spiritual teaching, even mine, but to go directly to what you have available to you, the actual stuff you have available to you. And what you have available to you is always the same. There's the experience of being. that is undeniable. And it's obvious that the experience of being that you're having, the experience of being I'm having, is the same experience. We get to that level. Every living thing, and I suspect even the things that don't appear to be living, there is a sense of I am. Maybe not the words I am, that seems to be unique to human beings, but the sense I am. Ramana Maharshi said that to simply be with the feeling of I, which is the sense of being, was the highest practice anybody could attain. That there's absolutely nothing beyond that. We want to think of the spiritual journey as this endless trek, right? We just keep going and going and going, right? Lifetime after lifetime. And finally, at some point, something happens. But it's not. If you just right now get in touch with the sense of being, that sense of being is it. There isn't anything beyond there. Could you get to someplace beyond there? Look for it. See if you can find it. And without that, could you experience anything else at all? If you didn't exist, if there was no being, could you experience anything? Well, the answer is no. So that's the fountainhead. The mind can't recognize it because it has no attributes. You can't point to it and say, there it is. And Christ warned about that. He was asked, what would be the signs of the coming of the kingdom of heaven? And he said, the kingdom of heaven doesn't come by observation. It doesn't come by looking. You can't say, look, it's over there, or look, it's over there. The kingdom of heaven is within you. So it's not a physical place we look at. What he's pointing at is the sense of being, and that sense of being is the great I am. That is the truth. That is the source of all wisdom, the source of all abundance, the source of all happiness. It is happiness itself. It's called God. It's called Buddha nature. It's called the self. It's called Para-Atman. It's that. It's that experience that you can have, that you become aware of the moment you just withdraw your attention from thinking and conceptualizing and just feel the sense of I that was there even before there was a word I. Well, I've gone on. I've droned on, I guess. Allow me to kind of go back and say hello again. Welcome to Satsang. Again, please like and share. Give me them thumbs. It's very, very, very helpful. Arby says hi. Hi, Arby. Rob Vickery, hello from London. Can hear me fine? Good. Danya, or is it Daira? Daira Santana. Is that a new name? Have you been here before, Daira? Dave Rose, hi from Massachusetts. Hi, Dave. Daryl, hello from MDDC. Good to have you, my friend. Ava, namaste G, and greetings from Poland. Hirgen, Urgen Gross, greetings from Australia. Thank you for your time. Oh, my pleasure. I love this. Liza, with a lot of Z's, says hi from the East Coast. Hello, ma'am. David and Elaine, hello, GP. And all greetings from Southeast England. Good to be here. Great to have you. Wooter Oosting. Oh, who's given me a $5 donation. Bless your hearts. You can donate here, by the way, if you'd like. I finally figured out how to actually get the money. I've been getting donations for a while into Google, because this is run by Google. I had no idea how to get it out, but I finally got it all set up and I got a code, so I can do that. So feel free to give me your millions. I'm happy to take it and put it to good use. Hi, GP. Greetings from Melbourne, Australia. That's Coco. Hello, Coco. First time in Satsang, but I've been watching you since last year. I've been involved with Advaita Non-Duality for the last 5 years. Thank you. Thank you. First time you've been here live. That's wonderful. Okay, so if you've been involved with Advaita, then the things I'm going to say probably won't go over your head. Then good. I always like to know if there's brand new people in listening, because I adjust some of it to make sure that I don't go over people's heads, because it is a very different way of looking at the world. Daryl says, right, truth does not have to be believed, it remains truth. Isn't that an amazing phenomena? I mean, we really need to think about that. Truth is discovered, right? It isn't invented, it is discovered. And that truth can be articulated in an infinite number of ways, an infinite number of ideas, and all of it, the ideas can serve truth. But an idea that gets believed to be true that isn't actually true, that isn't rooted in that truth, that's a belief. And that's where suffering comes from. But ponder that. The truth of your being remains inviolate. It's sitting there. This is why the direct path it's not progressive. It isn't you're developing it. You're discovering what's been there the whole time, because truth is always truth. Truth never becomes falsity. It can't. It always remains true. And falsity can never become true. Now, there's plenty of people in politics who think they can make the false true, but you can't do it. Eventually, it's a house of cards. Eventually, it will crumble. It will completely fall apart, because it's not self-sustained. Truth doesn't fall apart because it's self-sustained. Ursula says, hello all. Ursula from Madeira Island in Portugal. So good you're here. Wildcat Drums. Hello there. Hello, Dale. How are you? Gee, videos are looking good so far. Won't take long enough. Excellent. It's great to see him. Yeah, he's helping me out with editing some videos, making them look better than I could. Chris Gills. Hello, Chris. Hello, GP. How to get past the why question. I find my mind always brings up the why. This, why that, always wanting to know the cause. Intellectually, there is no cause, there's just consciousness. The why voice is a pain. Yes, it is. Well, all right. You're an experienced guy in this, and if this goes over anybody's head, please let me know. But when you say how to get past the why question, how do I get past the why question? Stop for a second, and I feel the energy, right? There's this nagging voice, right? And then there's this other voice that says, God, I don't like that nagging voice. I really want to get rid of it. Now, you can see clearly that voice that's kind of asking why, trying to want some kind of an intellectual justification for the insights that you're having. And you can clearly see that that's not you. How do I get rid of it? That's not me. The voice that says, I want to get rid of that, is that you? Or is that just another voice? Carefully. Don't take it on face value. It's saying, God, this sucks. This is a pain. This voice is a pain. It's causing me grief. It's causing me suffering. How do I make it go away? Now, what voice is that? Now, just imagine pure, perfect awareness. Is awareness saying, I really don't want that voice? If awareness said that, the voice would never happen in the first place. By the time you hear that voice, awareness, which is what you are, has already let it in. It's there. As is the voice that is a reaction to it. Take another step back. Out of that sense of identity that thinks there's an advantage to getting rid of this other voice. And notice how effective it's been at doing that as well. Is that voice essentially any different than the voice that's asking why? The voice that says, why? And the voice that says, shut up. And the voice, why? Shut up. Why? Shut up. Is there anything essentially different about them? The only difference between them is that you've identified with the voice that says, I don't like that. Who is that I? Is that the I am? Is that, is God sitting there going, oh, God, please stop saying why? Me. I'm going to pray to me. Please stop this from saying why. Oh, thank me. It's quiet. Thank me. Oh, I'm welcome. Really, think about it. You have to identify with that sense of a separate self that wants things to be different in order to suffer. Let the I return back to that place of being from which the entire scene is being witnessed. And isn't it being witnessed? Is this not appearing in front of you? So simply ask the question, to whom is this thought appearing? It's to me. Well, who am I? Am I the I that thought is referring to? Does this desire to get rid of that, is that really me? Or is there a very subtle self-image that is presenting itself and I'm falling for it? Again, is that the truth of me? Is that image of somebody annoyed and irritated the truth about me? Is that me? This is the question. When you do non-dual inquiry, it's always coming back to the I thought, and what is that I thought referring to? And who's the real I? The real I is obviously consciousness, that which is aware of whatever, my voice right now. It's the misidentification of that consciousness. It's mixed up with all of these thoughts. And so it appears to be, it's like a tar baby. It feels like it's stuck in there, but it's not. It's not stuck there. That is, you're not stuck there. Let the I return, the sense of I am, return back to that sense of being. The thought I am come back and root itself in the I am itself, which is consciousness. So without that I there, is that voice a pain? No, just a voice. It has no more significance than somebody playing a radio in the next room that I can kind of hear. And I've put this to the test. I've been times when I've been places when, it's just so noisy and annoying, music that I'd prefer not to listen to. Right? I feel myself, and you just kind of go, a big smile, you go, if I don't turn it into a problem, if I don't create a belief that this is a problem, is it a problem? No, it's just sound going on. And I can either move, and if I can't, either way I don't suffer. Because I don't suffer from anything except the beliefs that I myself have agreed to. So the belief that the why voice is a pain is a belief. It's not the truth. What's the truth about it? It's just a voice. It's just a voice that says, I think that voice is a pain. I don't like that. I wish it wasn't here. Who is that I? Find out for real. And that thought, although it is in first person, is it actually yours? Is that I referring to you? Well, in order to know that, in order to get the answer to that, you first have to know who you are. So Ramana Maharshi would say, to whom is that thought appearing? Well, it's appearing to me. Well, who are you? Now you're not that thought. This thought is there. Who are you without the thought? Suddenly you're back to pure consciousness, pure being, not mixed up with thoughts, not having an external reference point, just the pure experience of being. Prior to any doing, and by doing, I mean all thinking, feeling, all doing, right? Not just the doing, the body doing stuff. Thinking is a doing, right? Anything happening. Being is absolutely silent. It is the Sat Chit Ananda. How's that, Chris? Thank you for that question. Beautiful. Oops. Let's see. Rob. Actually answered one of your comments on YouTube on another video, Rob, and I'm going to be posting it pretty soon. It's one of the question you asked about the one of my answers about what happens the next life and that sort of thing. So I went into some detail, so look forward to that coming. I think Wildcat Drums is actually editing that one, if I got it to him. But anyway, it's going to be coming your way soon. Anyway, Rob says, once the delusion of character is seen, why does it not disappear? Why does it fight for survival? What is fighting to be believed? What a great question. What a great question. This is, wow. I take a sip of water. It's one of the most subtle parts of this whole non-dual approach to things. Because I can answer it in terms of, I can talk about the nervous system and how the separate self actually gets established as an activity of functioning in the human manifestation of life, why it takes on a life of its own, and why even after an initial awakening, it still appears to be active. I can also take the absolute position and say, to whom is this fight for survival actually happening? Who's believing that there's something there or someone there that is resisting? To whom does that entire picture present itself? To you. Well, who are you? Now, my approach is this, not just absolute, not just relative, but this. In the absolute, there is no body, there is no mind, there are no thoughts, emotions, or sensations. There is no person, there is no untoward experience. All of it are simply modulations or vibrations of consciousness. What you are experiencing is consciousness. And if I just heard, I think it was Francis Lucille telling a story about Atmananda, Krishna Menon, before his awakening, he was trying to envision pure consciousness. He actually used the term visualize pure consciousness. He used it differently than law of attraction people use the term visualization, but he did use that term. Anyway, a great spiritual master on par with Nisargadatta, Ramana, that crowd, right? Really rarefied atmosphere. Anyway, he was trying to visualize in meditation pure consciousness. And he lived in India, in the city in India. And I don't know if you guys have been in India, but it's noisy. Horns are beeping constantly. It's a very noisy place. And he's sitting there trying to meditate, and there's all this street noise coming in at him. He was just feeling really frustrated trying to get to pure consciousness. And then he suddenly realized that everything he was experiencing was consciousness, that there wasn't anything else to be experienced. There wasn't something out there and in here, something out here intruding on consciousness, that was consciousness manifesting itself, in which case he said, "You're what I'm looking for. Bring it on." suddenly the whole relationship with it changed. So when the delusion begins to dissolve, remember, from the absolute point of view, the experience of awakening is part of the dream. The reality, the truth is, you are now and always have been awake. And when you know who you are, you will see that that's a fact, right? The experience of awakening, what's actually happening is not somebody awakening, it is the always awake experiencing awakening as a form. The way an artist, or an artist would express some very intangible qualities like love or truth or beauty or justice or any wonderful quality, which are themselves attributeless, formless, but they get put into a form. That's what art is taking the intangible and making it tangible, right? So the intangible or essential nature of something gets reflected in a form, and that's how we see it. That's how consciousness sees itself. It sees itself by in form, which means that even this even this the one experiencing the disillusion of a delusion, and then experiencing that happening over time is no more real and actually no different a form than somebody like Ramana Maharshi, that the entire thing took place in about 45 minutes. Time's frame was longer or shorter, but it was exactly the same thing. He woke up that he had never been that person. You have never been that person. Now, if the unfoldment of that happens over 10 lifetimes or 10 minutes, time means nothing to the absolute. It means nothing to pure awareness. And so I can explain to you what's happening, right, from the point of view of the separate self, not as an actual self, but as a particular way in which the nervous system happens to be functioning. That's all it is. Everything is a flow, is a function, right? There's no solid thumb here. There's a constant flow of electrons that gives the illusion of something here. There's no thing anywhere. There's only the flow of energy that is constantly taking form. That energy isn't external. That energy is consciousness in its essence. How does consciousness know itself? It conceives itself in form. It's no accident that the word conceive or conception applies to the start of a life, the start of a new form. Consciousness perceiving itself, right? Not out there, but in itself, is what we know of as the universe. So to know that the separate self, this character, right, is there, to know what he or she is to understand that there's actually not a character there. Okay? So it's not that the character is there doing stuff. The character is simply an illusion that has been projected upon the natural functioning of life. The natural functioning of life is actually consciousness perceiving itself or conceiving itself. So if you take away this character, breathing's still happening, the heart's still beating, hair's still growing, birds are chirping, dolphins are swimming, people are falling in love. All of life keeps going. Rains happen, thunderstorms happen, hurricanes they all still happen. They just have no self. So when the sense dawns on you, and pretty much everybody that's happened to some degree to everybody, or you wouldn't be in satsang, right? The words I'm saying would just have absolutely no attraction to you whatsoever. And look, there's plenty of uh, videos on YouTube, right? There's probably 1,000 live streams going on right now, or on Facebook or something. You wouldn't be here if the awakening hadn't already happened in some degree. But the ultimate unfolding of the truth is that it already happened, because it never was anything but that. So see, every bit of functioning of life, the nervous system, the thoughts, what we call the nervous system, the energy system, is in fact nothing but consciousness conceiving itself, pondering its own nature. And that the sense of this character, this separate self, is simply a thought projected upon the fullness of consciousness. And that thought, of course, makes it appear as though life is separate from you, or you're made of that. It veils the consciousness. So the best explanation I can give as to why these things continue to occur, and I can refer to Ramana Maharshi as the authority for this. There's a term in Sanskrit referred to as vasanas. And vasanas refer to these very, very deep, subtle, completely unconscious, at this level, identification with form. It is simply the impulse to identify with form. And that the only thing that undoes that, no practice can undo that. The only thing that can undo that is the inquiry that brings you to the point where all effort stops. You're knocking on a door that has no doorknob, but you just basically standing in front of the door effortlessly. Earlier on, when I invited you to just go to that place of just pure being, right? The place that is witnessing thought, emotion, and sensation, just being there. That is the ultimate practice. It's the last practice. You can't go any further than that. At that point, all effort stops. Now, it can take effort, right, to get to bring your attention to that place. It can take effort to keep your attention to that place. Attention wanders, you go, oh, to whom is this thought appearing? It's appearing to me. Who am I? And you're bringing it back to the place from which everything is being seen. From that point on, you can't go any further. No effort can be given. You cannot make anything happen beyond that. You simply see that thought refers to the separate self, which is just a thought that has arisen. As it is arisen again, it's arisen again. Why? Because the seed of that thought, the identification with form, has not been completely burnt. How do I burn that seed so it does not reproduce? I sit right where I am in that beingness. That's it. That's the cure for it. So the thought comes up. Why is it fighting for survival? Well, there's a feeling of resistance, and then there's a sense of self projected on that resistance, and it appears as if there's something fighting for its survival. There isn't. There's simply the energy of life always organizes itself around something. When that something around which it is organized is being seen through and doesn't exist, that energy that wants to organize into form, which is the nature of consciousness, that's how you get everything's a form, right? Everything is a flow. Everything is an energy organizing itself into a form. Well, the energy has organized itself into this form of this belief in a person. When that person is seen through, which is what the awakening is. It's not that it's fighting for survival. What you're feeling is this energy that is now disorganized. It has to reorganize itself around something, and it wants to reorganize around what it used to organize around. You just keep bringing your attention back. Eventually, the most subtle seeds, or what they refer to in Buddhism as the repository consciousness, which kind of got diminished, right? Kind of reduced down to what people think of as the Akashic records, right? It's actually it's not false, but it's not completely true. Anyway, the more you keep doing that, the more those seeds that are popping up are not just coming from the nervous system, they're not just coming from this past life, they're coming from the very underpinnings that make the identification with form happen at all. All I can tell you is go to that place where you can't go any further and stay there. At that point, it is pure grace. The self realizes the self. Does that help, Rob? I'm not sure I was able to completely answer it. I tried to get it to a bunch of different directions, but I hope that helped. Dave Rose, what is the relationship between consciousness and the physical brain? On one level, the way I like to describe it, for people who are not quite so non-dual, I'll give you the purely non-dual answer in a second. The relationship between consciousness and the brain is kind of like the relationship of radio waves to radio. The brain, the body, the whole mechanism is simply the receiver, right? Or the vehicle through which the invisible consciousness or the invisible radio waves actually take form in sound and light. Which is why somebody says, well, consciousness isn't there if you take a hammer and smash your head in, right? There's no consciousness. No, there's no receiver. Take a radio and take a hammer to it, and you won't hear anything. But the music is, I mean, little kids will do that, they'll go look down in the back of the TV looking for the little people, right? Well, I can't now because it's a flat thing on the wall. When I was a kid, you could do that. Looking for the singer or the song. I'm looking for Beethoven's Ninth in this MP3 player. It's not there, right? It's somewhere else. That's consciousness in the brain. Looking for consciousness in the brain is like looking for the Mona Lisa in the paint. She's not there. It's pointless to find it. Now, if you want to take that even deeper, that the physical brain is nothing but an image in your mind. There is no physical brain. It's a mental concept. There is the experience of thought and reaction and all of that. That's what you experience. And then there's a concept that's an aspect of this idea of being a separate self. This separate self is made up of the physical form in the brain, and that the physical universe exists independently, and somehow consciousness is shining through it. There is no physical universe. It doesn't exist. It is all consciousness. The universe is in consciousness and made of consciousness. Matter is a myth. It is an unproved and unprovable assumption. The whole foundation of modern thought is that consciousness is a function of matter. And yet, I never experience matter. I only experience consciousness. It completely contradicts everyone's everyday experience. But the belief is a deep one. They've gone so far as I can't remember the guy so Thomas Huxley, I think is his name, has articulated it. Science already knows the whole story. We're just working out some of the details and in the numbers. That's the dogma, that the universe is material and consciousness. Can you explain consciousness? Well, no, but we will. It's just a matter of time. It's some kind of function of the brain. Right? No, it isn't. It's completely independent of the brain. And there's all sorts of evidence to that shows that. I think there's a whole book. It's a book written by Rupert Sheldrake. He's a doctor. He's a biologist and amazing guy. He's kind of a heretic in the scientific community now, because he says explicitly that consciousness is not in the body. It is not localized. He actually wrote a book. I think it's called How Dogs Know Their Master's Coming Home, and he did experiments with dogs, and they know when their master's coming home, and it's not by sound. They would have the master drive a different car coming up. They'd write to the place waiting for them to come. They'd have the master's car driven by somebody else. No reaction in the pet. They just know. They know. They are not sensing it through their senses. They are sensing it through consciousness. It's not localized. So the physical brain is a concept. It is a material concept projected upon conscious experience and has the belief in a material universe. The belief in a material universe grew directly out of the belief of being a separate self. I'm a separate and there's other. What is that other made of? And that the answer came, that's matter. It's made of this substance that exists independently of us. It's all based on that initial trauma, that initial fall we all experience that made us believe ourselves to be a separate self. So the entire, what we call the physical body, does not exist. You can prove this for yourself. Do you ever experience a body? You experience what we call sensation. You can find sensation, for sure. But search the sensations themselves, every feeling that you have, everything that goes through you. The assumption is that there's a physical body that those sensations are originating in. But if you look, you can never find that body. You can only find the sensations. Look hard enough, you'll become convinced. There is no body. There is just sensation, which means the sensations aren't originating from a body. The sensations are consciousness. And now sensation disappears. This is the 5 skandhas in Buddhism, and I could go through the whole, it's really fascinating. Maybe I'll do a whole video on that at some point. Does that cover it for you, Dave? Dave Rose? I'm actually going slower today. And I got a big long list here, but maybe I'll get through it. Maybe I won't. Hello from Carrie Brogan. Hi, Carrie. Coco, who's our new person, first time here at Satsang. This is great. I've been reading Nisargadatta's later works. I've read everything he's done many times. It seems to be pointing to the fact that consciousness is prior to beingness. I don't seem to understand what he meant. I thought beingness was consciousness. Is this a language cultural difference? Or is this idea that the absolute is unknowable? Great question. Boy, you've got this very clearly. For the most part, with Nisargadatta, he has a different, he used words slightly differently. When he used the word consciousness, he was referring to the I am, the sense of being. Now, if you look really closely, right, whereas I would just call it the sense I am. And I use the term, the absolute awareness and consciousness, all synonymous, right? As does, I think most of the teachers nowadays do. But you do have to draw a distinction, and that's the words he used. So he used consciousness as that creative energy of the absolute. And yes, the absolute is unknowable. The first indication of it is the sense I am. Now, there could be no sense I am, right, unless there was something prior to that. That doesn't mean prior in time. It existed and then this existed, because they happen simultaneously. It's the nature of it. But in looking at it from the order of being, right, that the absolute knowing itself, that existence is obviously something has to exist before it could even know itself. But take time out of it and you see they're absolutely one. There isn't an absolute, the absolute awareness and consciousness. They're actually one. It is the nature of the absolute to be conscious, right? So it isn't just being without knowing that I am. It is being and knowing simultaneously. That's what's meant by Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss. But it's clear, but it needs to be made clear that with the arising of consciousness comes the sense I am, comes the universe, comes the created everything that we experience. But all of it is nothing but the absolute pondering its own nature. So it is in its absolute pure essence, it is unknowable. Just the way pure white light is unknowable, right? You have to pass white light through a prism in order to see the different aspects of it. White light itself, you can't say that it's different from all of those colors. You can't say it's just a combination of those colors. Any of you have ever tried to combine all the colors to get, what you get is kind of this ugly, pukey brown, right? It doesn't make this pure invisible white. Be great if it did, make invisible paint, but it doesn't. So you can't say that it is the sum total of them, the sum total of its parts. You can't say that it's the absence of its parts. I mean, it's beautiful. It's neither this nor that nor both nor neither. It's totally mysterious. Consciousness as the absolute is completely and totally unknowable because it just is. Before the isness has manifested itself or reflected itself in something, in some form. And of course, every form that there is, the form of this iPad sitting next to me, which I really don't need anymore. I should turn it off because I can read everything on the screen here. This is a form, but the only reason it can be a form is that it reflects the absolute beingness that is formless. And so the formless and the form are one. That was the whole meaning of the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness in Buddhism is exactly what Nisargadatta would mean by the absolute. Emptiness being, it has no quality whatsoever. It just is. Right? Not is as anything, but because it is the infinite isness, anything can be. It is the reason why we have experience at all. It is not a void. It is both empty and full simultaneously. It is both the universal and the particular simultaneously. It's the absolute and the relative simultaneously. It is the Satchitananda. It is the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. It is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma. This is the way we have to, when we are expressing it and pointing at it. But the ultimate place is completely unknowable. And again, don't make it distant. Just go within yourself to the place that is witnessing thought, witnessing sensation, witnessing emotion. The place from which it is all being seen. Just stay there for a second. That's the absolute. Notice, there's no thought, feeling, sensation, anything, just pure knowing, pure experiencing. It is completely empty, completely still, has no attributes, no qualities. This is the absolute you. I don't want you to think of it as the absolute, it's you. The absolute is referring to you. To you, not mixed with anything else, not in reference to anything else. That which is infinitely just is has no second to be referenced to. So it is absolutely still, absolutely empty. It is pure isness. So it is mostly, with Nisargadatta, it is mostly just the way he used those terms, and he was very consistent in the way he did that. So he has, one of the books is called Prior to Consciousness, and it's wonderful. It's another collection of conversations with him. It's absolutely wonderful. I recommend it to anybody, because he is drawing the attention back to that which gives existence to even what we experience, consciousness experienced. So consciousness, in its essence, is the absolute. Consciousness, in its manifestation, is the universe of form. And the two are one. They are not two. That's Advaita, right? Not two, not divided. So thank you for that question, Coco. Wonderful to have you here. Great that you're reading Nisargadatta. Hi from Ireland, from John Sheehan. Hello, John. Hi from Norway. This is Hazard Zero. New person. Welcome. So glad to have you. Very, very glad to have you. Starlight Glimmer. This video won't load for me for some reason. Like, I can still see the chat. I might have to watch this later regardless. Hello, I hope everyone is doing well. Oh, so you can't hear me. Just try refreshing it. Nobody else, it appears, has had that problem. You haven't had that problem before, because I've seen you here before. Not exactly sure. And if anybody's ever tried to get support from Google or YouTube, you know that's a waste of time. So anyway, David and Elaine, hello, my lovely friends. Let's see, did you start this earlier and I miss it? Because it looked like... No, let's see, maybe not. Feelings and sensations arise in the body, and mind gives them a label and attaches meaning to them, thus creating a story. Correct. These feelings may be based on memories of past experiences, but we see that in the absence of direct experience, thoughts also arise, which the mind hooks onto those feelings in order to explain them. And so another story is created. So it appears all content of mind is illusory in terms of being a false perception. Yes, very, very good observation. The feelings that we have, feelings are always reactive. They never just happen by themselves. There's always something triggering. Oftentimes the trigger is so subtle we don't even recognize it. A lot of the triggers take place just reacting to something in the environment. But it is very much in the moment. You can tell that just by looking at animals, right? A cat will be in a fight, right? And it's totally into that fight, right? The hair's up, right? It's hissing and stuff, and it's either going to fight or it's going to run. Usually run. Most critters run, even predators. Nobody picks a fight except humans. But then you'll see it a few moments later, and it's licking itself, sitting in the sun. All of that energy is absolutely gone. It holds on to nothing. That energy, that part of the nervous system called the limbic brain, if there was such a thing as a brain, that would be it, is completely in the present moment, as is the entire structure is completely in the present moment. So it's always just reactive. Now, how it reacts, the way in which it reacts to things is completely conditioning. It's arbitrary. It's based on whatever your experience was when you were a kid. Now, enter in the capacity to think and imagine, and it starts feeding images to this same part that's always in the now. And it gets interpreted as if it's in a now. So a thought you have can trigger a fear, even though there's actually nothing to be afraid of. This is the big illusion of it, why it can be seen so difficult to see through, because we feel, yeah, I really am afraid. I really am afraid. Well, the fear you're feeling is real, but the thing you're afraid of is not. It's simply triggering a mechanism that is designed to react to real fear, right? In the environment, not the environment in our heads, right? So feelings and sensations are arising all the time, because the body is in constant interaction with the environment. In fact, it is one with the environment. The body is nothing but a particular set of causes and conditions in the environment. It's not like there's a body sticking in the environment. The body and the environment are one. This constant dance going on that we feel as sensation and emotion. As you point out, the mind then is cataloging this, labeling it, attaching memory and associations and meanings, all of which are arbitrary, all of which are based on past conditioning, none of which are true. They're all fictions, but then comes up with this story and then believes it. Some of the memories and stuff are all coming from past experience. We see that in the absence of direct experience, thoughts also arise, which the mind hooks onto these feelings in order to explain. Yes, it does. Only the real evidence we have of that is when we're dreaming at night. Now the external world has been shut off. That TV has been turned off. There's nothing coming in from there. So now the only thing that's appearing are the images completely coming from the mind, until at some point during the night those exhaust themselves and you fall into deep dreamlessly, complete contentless existence. So in the dream state, the mind is producing things, and of course we feel, we react, we get excited, right? Or we get afraid, right? But it's all completely happening within the mind. It always is that, right? But it's really evident when you dream, when the so-called external stimulus have been turned off, the internal ones will keep going. Let's see. And so it actually creates. Notice your dreams aren't just random. There's a narrative, as random as they may be, right? You can, like, having a conversation with somebody in turn, and you're in a different planet, right? I mean, there's no segue. There's no nice, well edited segues in between the videos. But the mind makes up a narrative, right? And actually, sometimes you'll wake up in the morning and there'll be one of these completely scattered things, and you'll immediately try to make meaning of it and put a narrative to it. Well, there is no narrative to it whatsoever. But yes, that's the mind doing it. And the raw material out of which it builds its narrative is the conditioned patterns, memories, associations. That's it. The conditioned programmed responses. So coming to see through those, to see that they are the most important, to see the thing to understand about them. Once I've explained how it all works, right? You never have to think about that again, right? You're done with that. Now all you have to know is that whatever the story is, and that's what the mind does, it's always a fiction. It's never true. It is always made up based on memory and past experience. And the narrative got put in place, the way in which the narrative would be constructed over time got put in place right at the beginning with the original narrative that got created. And that original narrative is the story of the separate self, the belief in a separate self. That was the origin of it. And there's just this unique characteristic of the mind, that it is ignorant that it made it up. It makes it up and believes it simultaneously. And so it becomes the truth for the mind. And because the mind believes in it, keeps repeating it, experiences it, and keeps going with it. I mean, that ball will just keep going until you, consciousness, which are not the mind, prior to the mind begin to awaken to yourself as consciousness, because only consciousness can look at it and say, that's a fiction. The mind can't do that. It doesn't have any capacity. All it can do is make adjustments to the storyline, maybe come up with a new one, but it'll always be related in some way. It won't be a total non sequitur. Only consciousness, which is truth, can see the fiction. So the moment you begin to see that this is a story, right, that's consciousness awakening. You're not in the story anymore. You're not that character in the story any longer. Now that awakening happens, you see it, and immediately the mind takes that little tidbit and says, oh, I've had awakening experience now, and now creates a new narrative based on the old narrative, but with a little bit of new information taken in. It kind of gathers it into the story. And now it appears as though I, the separate self, have had an awakening, that I've seen something true. The separate self never sees anything true because there is no separate self. It is only consciousness, which is truth, which is true knowing, which is true being, that recognizes the falsity of the story. So if you're seeing the story as false, it means you're standing as consciousness, not as somebody who got a better idea. You are actually out of the game. Now stay out of it. Don't go back in. Don't let yourself be sucked back into that by the mind making yet another narrative. And remember, the narrative shifts and changes over time, but the main character is always the same. It's this imaginary self. The plot has many twists, but the protagonist is always the same. Also happens to be the antagonist, but I want to stretch the metaphor. Starlight says the video is finally working. Great. Hello. Gee, hi, Starlight. Dave. Oops. There was a little bit more there. Did I miss? No, I got it. Chris says, all is God. Thanks, GP. Yes, all is God. That's a nice way of putting it. It's kind of the way they put it in the New Thought, churches, which are very close to the ultimate non-duality. But there's still this me and the God of the image of, well, we'll go to that. Anyway, I know that because I studied that for a while. Dave Rose. Yes, thanks. I saw Rupert Sheldrake speak on YouTube about his book, The Science Delusion. Thanks again. Yes. Oh, it's a great video. It was actually banned by TED, by the TED Talk where he did it. It was great. Same show. Him and Graham Hancock both had they talked one right after the other. They removed both of their videos. Made some recordings before they got taken down, so they got to be seen. But because it so contradicts the leading materialistic dogma, and he's not the only scientists that are coming to realize that consciousness is something completely different from matter. It is not a function of matter. It is its own thing, and that it is far more primary than matter is. That is being more widely seen. And I really, maybe this is just my sanguine, hopelessly optimistic hope, but I do believe that over the next 10 to 20 years that this is going to become a genuine position in the scientific community, that the consciousness only model is going to be seen for what it is, and consciousness is going to be recognized as primal. That is also what's going to save the world from itself. Sarah Sands, hi G, so happy to be here with much love from France. Sarah said, dear G, do you think that the Enneagram is useful? To a point. All of the various kinds of teachings are useful to a point. I never really discount any, because if somebody's into that and they're gaining something for that, and I come along and say, well, that's stupid, don't do that, you really need to do this, I'm not actually bringing them to a higher understanding. I'm just making them feel really bad about where they are, especially if they regard me as an authority, right? Oh, you shouldn't do that. And I get that sometimes. Why should I be doing this? No, don't just stop doing stuff because you've been introduced to an idea. Let it percolate, let it marinate. So some people talk about astrology. I'll talk about astrology, what it represents. I know some really, personally know one of the leading astrologists in the world. And it's uncanny. I know a guy who can read the chakras. I don't know how he does it. I don't know what he actually sees. I met a lot of people who claim to. One I actually believe. A woman who did palm reading, enneagrams, and interpretation, all sorts of different things. I think they're as legitimate as any of the energy healing techniques, and or the constellation, family constellation, which is another great technique. I think there's all sorts of. I totally agree with the Heart Sutra that all dharmas are empty. And dharma is a teaching. It means that no teaching is inherently the truth. It is a pointer. They're all pointers. They're all models. And at different stages in people's development, different models come into our lives that help us and are useful to us. They help us get to the next stage. The danger always is that people mistake what is a model temporary. The dharmas are temporary, right? The moment it no longer is useful, you throw it out, and you get another one until you finally get the last one that you throw away, and you pick up no more because you realize that you are what you've been seeking. You are. It's always been you, and the power of all of these things has always been being drawn from you. But in the meantime, every single teaching has a use for that particular state of consciousness that's using it. Once it's served its purpose, it needs to be let go of. If it isn't, it becomes petrified. That becomes fundamental when you get conflict and people argue about, which direction do the chakras spin or how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. It's completely mindless. It's useless. It has outlived its purpose. Buddha would tell the story that you get in a boat, you go to the other side of the lake. You don't pick up the boat then and go and take it with you into town. You leave it, right? You're done with it. It served its purpose. Let it serve somebody. Let it serve somebody else. And he made that reference even to his own teachings, right? Which are the purest teachings that exist. So if even the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, the sacred wheel of the Dharma is empty of a self and temporary, well, so is the anagram, so is astrology, so is what I'm doing right here, right now. Okay? I mean, the way, even the ways earlier talking about the way Nisargadatta taught it was different. We have to discern the words he used and what he meant. The meaning always gets to the same place. Things like the more esoteric things like the anagram and astrology and that sort of stuff give way to non-dual inquiry, to this kind of inquiry. But in their day, they're useful. Right? Chanting a mantra, it's useful. Sometimes I find myself, and just for whatever reason, my mind just won't be quiet. Right? I withdraw myself, and just chant. So right. I mean, some people. I chanted with some Buddhist group Nam Myoho Renge Kyo Nam Myoho. When I'm having a long time, but just had friends of mine that were, so I'd go with them and chant for 15, 20 minutes, just saying over and over again. It's great. It's great. Quiets the mind. Right. It's temporary. Right. As all these are. The only real quieting of the mind is when the seeds that are giving rise to thought, rise to the separate self, as I was talking about earlier, are finally burnt away. All practices that simply do it quiet the mind are temporary. The moment the practice stops, I'm back, right? So we want to look at all of these techniques. They bring some advantage, but always be looking is the reason an enneagram works because it has some inherent power, or is it because I believe in it? That's a powerful question to ask. When I asked that question, I found that everything works because I think it will, because I believe it will, and I believe things into existence. So, does an enneagram have an inherent capacity? No. It is all a reflection of mind. Now, for some, that's a doorway to that, but it's very easy to get stuck in those doorways, as you can tell. Ultimately, the only thing that dictates my experience are my beliefs. And the primary belief, the belief I hold about myself, the separate self. Am I that self? No, I am not. And that is where you ultimately come to. And at that point, all the rest of the teachings fall apart. Everything falls away. Before that, Ramana Maharshi would use the example of a stick that you would use to stir the fire. Keep going on. Eventually, when it's time, that stick you throw into the fire as well, and it's burnt up with the fire. There's no need for anything left. 16. Okay. Very good. Thank you for that, Sarah. Suketa says, blessings to you, Suketa. Shunya from Valley Terra. You saying shunyata or just shunya? Is that like a phrase I'm not shunya, right? I mean, is that a phrase maybe I'm not familiar with? Coco says, thanks, GP, very helpful. Good. I'm glad that's clear, because obviously he was a fully enlightened master Nisargadatta. So we just need to understand the words to make sure we understand his meaning. Tom, hi. How do you know what you are saying is true? How do you know you're in love? I mean, lots of people, could say to you, oh, that's not really love. That's infatuation, right? Everybody will have an opinion of it. People have tried to analyze it, chemically and endorphins and all sorts of stuff like that, trying to come up with some criteria, say, yes, he's really, it's a totally subjective experience. How do you know you're in your love? You just know. How do I know this is true? I just know. And which is why, because it is completely subjective, it is completely experiential, it's completely the result of my own direct inquiry. I couldn't possibly tell you, right? This is true, believe it. I would never tell anybody, don't believe anything. I don't want you to believe, I want you to understand. My job, or any teacher, anyone who is teaching satsang, right, communion with truth, who is speaking, is only pointing you towards the truth that is you. You have to discover it for yourself. Right? And if you go same place, you find that I'm wrong, tell me. I'm more than happy to hear about it. Right? But I've had enough experience of direct seeing and the feeling that goes with knowing something that, we've all had the experience of the aha moment, an insight. How do you know it's an insight? How do you know that aha moment is true? You just know, because the truth lives in you. So you have a sense of it, the sense of it being true. So that's where you go. That's where I went. I had that sense. And then I would check it out with some other teachers, scriptures, the sutras, what other great masters have said, and go, this fits. This fits. I'm not just kind of making up. I'm not just going crazy. Right? So when I point to these things, all I'm doing is pointing and pointing things out. Right? When I talk about the self as being just an image in the mind projected upon experience, you have to look for yourself to see, is that actually true? Do not take my word for it. I do not want the responsibility of telling somebody this is the truth and you should believe it. Because the moment you believe something, the moment you take something into your consciousness as true, you will begin to manifest it. You'll begin to experience it. And I tell everybody, guard that door. Don't let anything in that you're not putting to you're putting to the test of your own direct experience. The only thing a spiritual teacher can do is to show you how to put that to the test, how to go about testing it, how to go about seeing it for yourself. Good education never tells you what to think, it tells you how. Right? This is how to approach things. This is how to actually see how something actually works. And that's all I can do, right? So for me personally, I'm saying it because to me it's self-evidently true. Right? But that doesn't do you a damn bit of good. Right? You have to see it for yourself. And and make it so important to you that you push it all the way. That's the most important thing. I've had some people as students that have come, they just kind of listen to what I say, right? They take it in as a belief, but they don't really actually push it all the way themselves. Sometimes I have to try to give them a little quick kick. Don't believe me. In the history of Zen is just redolent with Zen masters who would answer a question one way, and the same student would come back and answer it, and then they give them the exact opposite answer. Because they weren't trying to give them an answer. They were trying to shake them into seeing the answer for themselves. So they'd answer yes one time and no the other to the same question. Right? Because it's about shaking the mind out of its habits so that it begins to see directly. This is the direct path. This is not a progressive path. This is not an acquisition of knowledge. It is Vedanta, which means the end of knowledge. It is jnana knowledge, which is transcendent knowledge. The knowledge of the self. Transcendent knowledge is the knowledge of the self, which can only be direct. Not knowledge about, but knowledge of, which means, and the only way you can know yourself is directly, because you can't stand and look at yourself like an object. So the whole subject-object, classic analysis, scientific method is of no use. This is a completely subjective examination because you are what is being examined. So it is completely the experience of yourself. Look at what you are actually experiencing and peel back all the ideas that you've been taught about what you're experiencing to see what you are actually experiencing. The veil comes down. That and only that should be regarded as the truth. So, Suketa says, GP, where does my awareness go when under anesthesia? I have no memory of those 10 hours while I was going through the operation. Well, I mentioned it a little bit before. Somebody was asking about the brain. Think of the body as the receiver, right? For the radio signal. The radio signal is still quite there, right? Somebody turns off the radio, right, or unplugs it for a moment, right? The capacity for it to receive is still there, right? Of course, you took a hammer to it, an accident or something, and basically human beings, we call them dead, and radio, we call them destroyed. It can no longer function as a radio. The signal that it was giving, that it was amplifying, is still there. You're that. You're the awareness that is shining through this form. So if the form has become incapacitated and can't transmit anymore, or can't receive and express, it has nothing to do with the awareness. And even in the experience of being unconscious, your awareness doesn't go anywhere. It simply is completely cut off. Because the body has been shut down, awareness is completely cut off from all content. So there's no time, there's no objects, there's no name, there's no memory, nothing is there. Just being. You just are. That's the experience of the absolute. And then it comes back. The last time, so not been many times I've been put under anesthesia. I had cataracts, so I had to have them removed from both eyes. The second operation, I was aware of being aware during the entire thing. It was a little distant thing out there, right? But I was aware of being aware. The first time I wasn't. It was like out cold, like the thing had been completely cut off. The second time, no. There was still I was still aware of being aware. The awareness, the self-awareness was still there. But again, I have no idea. But I think you get the point. They always say, well, what happens when you're unconscious? Boom, you see, there's no awareness now. Well, no, there's an awareness of nothing, right? The radio's just been turned off. So you are not aware of any signs of it coming through. That doesn't mean it's not there. See, we have to see ourselves, see consciousness not as in the body, but as permeating the body. It's the field in which the body and all experience is arising out of. I mean, the deepest they've gone in physics is the sense of a field that forms are simply arising in and disappearing in. The search for the particle, the ultimate particle, is like call off the search. It isn't like that. The particles come in and out of existence. It's completely and totally mysterious. So think of all the forms of the universe as simply coming into existence out of this substratum, which is consciousness itself. Christ put it beautifully when he said that the tree bends where the wind blows, but you can't tell where it's coming from or where it's going. He was trying to make the point that if we were ignorant, we would think that the tree was moving. We refer to the tree moving, the tree dancing, right? We might even go look for little muscle fibers, try to find some fibers with the tree was moving, because we would be ignorant of the fact that the tree was being moved. It wasn't actually moving itself. The body is not moving itself. It is insentient. Without consciousness, the body has no sentience whatsoever. It is not awake. It is not even alive, right? All the attributes that the body has, motion and thought, all of that is consciousness permeating it. It has arisen in that consciousness. That was the point Christ was trying to make. You cannot tell. You cannot detect the spirit separate from the effect that it's having. And so your awareness hasn't gone anywhere. Pure awareness. It's actually quite blissful, right? Happens every night when we go to sleep. We go into deep sleep. Same thing. All experiences is removed. There's no content whatsoever. What do? We wake up in the morning and go, oh God, I slept so well. It felt so good. We spend lots of money on mattresses, right? I mean, you can't swing a cat without seeing a mattress ad, right? We love that. Why? Well, because you're not there, right? The ego isn't there bothering you. I mean, imagine if this thought thing was going on 24/7, you could never get rid of it. Oh my God, that would be hell. We have been mercifully gifted with this thing called sleep, where we get to check out. Now, if you get good at non-dual meditation, you don't need as much sleep because you're doing it all the time. You're in that place, and sometimes there's content there, sometimes there isn't, but you are always there. Is that out for you, Sukita? Sarah San says, thanks G. It is pointing me to non-duality. Love, Sarah. Good, excellent. Christian Malinovic with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. I got 5 stars. Great. Thank you. I'm assuming they're for me. If not, I'm going to take them from me anyway. We have another 30 minutes or so. Good. Oh, I'm at the bottom of the queue there. Oops, here comes some more. Infinity Coaching. Hi, GP. Saab in Paris here. Hi, Saab. Love this reminder and point of view that all these systems, techniques, etc., are just steps. And the final step is that you don't feel you need another one. I really feel I'm going in that direction. With thanks to the folks like you. Love the humor too, as ever. Good. Yes, there is There is an end to it. And the end turns out to be the direct path, which was available the whole time, but we really didn't know it. All other paths are progressive. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, right? It's the mainstream. It's what most spiritual and religious practices are. Self-help. It's all progressive. I'm trying to improve myself. It is only the direct path that says, who's this self you're trying to improve? All the other paths look at the verbs and the direct objects and never the subject. I want this. Feeling of wanting and the object that is wanting. I am afraid. The verb, I am in this fear, the feeling of the fear. And none but the direct path say, that's good, but who wants that? Who's afraid of that? Who is suffering that? Who is experiencing that? And it's amazing. Take any phrase and like that and ask the person, well, who is the I that wants that? It's not been asked that question. What? Well, me, of course. Well, wait, slow down. Who do you mean by me? I want. I know what the word want means. I'm very familiar with that. We could talk about that all day. The object you're saying you want, that we can talk about all day. Shouldn't we have the same kind of instant capacity to immediately say who the I is that wants it? But we don't. Because that I that wants or fears or desires, experiences, that I is completely made up. It is completely assumed. And we don't even bother questioning these assumptions. When we start questioning these assumptions, we begin to realize that there is within us this idea of a separate self, this idea of a person that we are. And the more we examine it, the more we see that it's very elusive. You can't pinpoint it. It's changing. It fluctuates. It's like whack-a-mole. You just can't quite nail it down. And then somebody just gently points you to a very obvious phenomenon. Well, all of that is being seen by something, isn't it? Isn't that something you? Isn't that, whatever that is, isn't that the real you? Now the path is direct. We're going closer and closer to the source, to the place from which all of this is being seen. And as that we go, the other stuff's falling away, not through practice, but through understanding, not through progress or development, but through direct seeing. If I see something I believed is true, and I now see that it isn't true, it falls away. I don't consciously hold on to something I know isn't true. And then I realized that I could only see that it wasn't true from the seeing place of truth. My God, I'm the truth. What I actually am is truth. Okay. David Elaine. Many thanks, GP. Wonderful reply. The seeing of the story is one of the most fundamental insights for us, and certainly makes for a more harmonious life and a more humorous one, if I may add. These stories are so out there. Oh my God. It's just, some of them are just so frighteningly insane, and some are just downright comical. But we have to understand, because the mind is not a thing. Consciousness is the discerning thing. So mind could take any form whatsoever and get completely wrapped up in its shorts, right? And believe it, right? Because it in itself is not substance. It is not substantive. The mind just gives expression to whatever. Right? The substance is the knowing. Only truth is substance. Only truth is reality. You guys hearing that? My granddaughter is very upset about something, not with me. Normally, I can't hear anything going on other part of the house, but she has decided there's something wrong, and it needs to be corrected. And this will be a resolution of either. This will be a resolution where she will have to come to terms with her own separate self, her 3-year-old sense of a separate self. Very funny. Let's see, do I have enough for that? And yes, the other part I wanted to say about that is life becomes harmonious. Why does it become harmonious? Because we're not fighting anymore. You don't have to fight with bad thoughts, negative thoughts. You just see them as not true, right? And if seeing them as not true, there's some habit energy where they may continue to reoccur. If you're inexperienced in this sort of thing, you may think, oh, why do they keep coming back? I must have done it wrong. No, that's just what they do. And continue to see them. It's not true. It's not true. You keep going back to that place of being. You're burning up the seeds that are still sprouting, the weeds that are still starting to come up. Eventually, they won't come up anymore at all. It's like you're seeing afresh every single time. So don't be the least bit concerned about when stuff comes up. Stay in your harmony. The true self has no argument with anything. It certainly has no argument with reality. David Rose said, I've heard Thich Nhat Hanh say that consciousness is always conscious of something. Subject does not exist without object. Is he saying consciousness does not exist in deep sleep? I'm only a little bit familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh. I know he's a Zen master. And so in his particular tradition, the use of the word consciousness, it may be similar to what Nisargadatta is referring to. I know that essentially we're saying the same thing. But Nisargadatta would refer to consciousness as the sense I am. And of course, that sense I am only arises in relationship to something else, right? There's the feeling I am, which is absolutely pure. And that is simply consciousness aware of itself, or the absolute aware of itself. That is the being and knowing as one, right? The expression, the idea, the thought I am, and it doesn't have to be the words I am. It's just the expression of I am brings into existence spontaneously the entire universe, right? It isn't there's the I am, and it's creating things. God and the universe are one. That sense of I am is God that creates the universe, right? Consciousness is prior. The way I use the word consciousness is the absolute essence, right? Is prior to that, not in time, but simply in the order of being, because you have to be before anything can be made manifest about being, right? And so, in that sense, that consciousness of, right, is always subject-object simultaneous. They always arise together. I and you always arise together. Tall and short have to arise together. Dark and night have to arise together. In terms of the relative, you can't have one without the other. That's the whole meaning of the yin-yang symbol. It can be predominantly one, predominantly the other in a moment, but it is never just the one. Because anything relative has to be defined in terms of its opposite. So the entire universe of form is one essence. It is one expression, right? And that one expression appears as the two sides of the equation. So from that sense, the subject-object is always present, right? When you dive in deeply and focus your attention on the subject, both the subject and the object disappear. The first thing that happens is what we saw as a subject now becomes the object of something subtler, right? As I'm beginning to explore myself, the I, I'm turning my attention away from the objects of that I to the I itself. Well, what's happened? I'm now, that I is no longer a subject. It's an object. It's an object to the ultimate subject. And then we see that both the subject and the object, the dream and the dreamer, are one. And this is the relative play of the universe that makes form possible. And then the deeper dimension of consciousness, which is the absolute awareness, is consciousness that is not a subject. It is not part of a subject-object split. It is pure subjectivity, which is also paradoxically pure objectivity. It's the only thing that exists independently of everything else, right? So at that point, subject and object collapse, and that's the absolute. It's the best way. I think it's about the best way I can explain it. It's right. So consciousness as a subject-object relationship. You're saying, is he saying consciousness does not exist in deep sleep? When you look at consciousness as the consciousness of the subject-object relationship, that's absolutely accurate. Consciousness, that thing that we use consciousness to as a word for, does not exist in deep sleep. The subject-object relationship is gone. There's no subject-object relationship even with yourself. There's no memory. You have no name, history, past, meaning, associations, anything. You know, the love of your life could be laying next to you and you're completely oblivious to it. There's no subject-object relationship there. What is there is just pure, non-objective, non-subjective consciousness, which is your being. Being is still there. It can never not be there. So again, it really is just we're playing with the words, and I'm trying to point beyond the words to the meaning, so that when you grab the meaning, you go, yes, I get it. We're saying the same thing with different words. Don't get hung up in the words. People do. People say, no, that's not what consciousness is. Consciousness. I've had people do that to me, and I go, dude, it's just a word, right? Let's use the word to try to see if we're talking about the same thing or not. No, that's not it. You know, they're just kind of that's fundamentalism, right? Now you're a fundamentalist. You're on the Advaita jihad, right? So we're after the meaning. We don't care what the word is. I'll use any word. Call it Bob, right? Praise Bob. And yes, deep sleep is my favorite state, as is everyone. That is an insight into the true nature of the absolute. But it is simultaneously the infinitely unfolding universe. And there's no contradiction or difference between the two. In that way, your happy place becomes everyday life. Everything is consciousness. As I mentioned before, Atmananda, trying to meditate and getting irritated with all the traffic noise coming from outside, and realize, wait a minute, that is consciousness. It's what I've been seeking. Bring it on. Sophie Austin. Hi, Sophie. Dear GP, please, could you assist with the intensity of energy rising in my body while sitting in my core? Thank you. Love, Sophie. Sure. I don't know exactly if something triggered it or not, but okay, let's put that aside. It doesn't even matter. Just be present with it. Withdraw your attention into the body and just feel that energy. Anybody can do this about any sensation. This is how you get past thinking and the story and into the direct experience, and find that the direct experience is always without suffering. Withdraw your attention and close your eyes if you like. You can go immediately to the place from which you can observe and which you're looking at that intense energy in the body. If that's too hard, then just start with your breath. Just start breathing. Take some nice deep breaths with your eyes closed. It'll bring the attention inside your body. And then gradually, as there, just pull back a little bit more. Notice that there's an awareness of the breathing. Then let the attention expand a little bit and take in your whole body. Notice that there's an awareness of the thoughts, the awareness of the sensations in the body, and the awareness of the emotions, and the entire matrix of it that's triggering this and that, the feeling of it, intensity of it. And then put your attention directly on that energy rising. Notice that there's resistance to doing that. Right? The conditioned response is to move away from an intense energy, to try to flee from it. And don't do that. Stay with it. Instead, become curious and loving towards it. Accept it. Accept it the way you'd like to be accepted. If you were in a bad mood or something, you'd still want to be loved. Right? So there's this intensity of energy. Right? And there's awareness of the intensity of that energy. Now, while you're feeling that energy, your mind's going to make comments about it, where it's coming from, why it's there, it shouldn't be there. Just say, thank you, I don't need you right now. And just let yourself be fully present with the actual energy itself, with no story and no resistance, pure allowing. And allowing is just love, benevolence. It's okay for it to be here, for whatever reason it has. It isn't a permanent condition. It wasn't there a while ago. You know it's not going to be there forever. So just let it be there. No story. You're just being present with it, but not following the normal conditioned reaction that is unconsciousness. If you follow the reaction, you go unconscious. If you stay with it, just as it is, you're conscious. You are present. Presence is the absolute awareness. That is the only healer there is. And just stay with that. No resistance, no suffering. It's just an energy moving through the system. Give it permission to move through the system. It's okay. It's like Atmananda and the noise outside. So, oh, that is consciousness. All right, bring it on. This is just something bubbling up in consciousness. It's made of consciousness. Consciousness is experiencing itself in this form. So no story about it. If it has some need, if it has some reason to be there, needs to tell you, it'll tell you. You don't need the mind to analyze it. Just be present with it, the way a mother would be present with her child when all it can do is cry. You can't even tell her what it wants. And then just return to your breathing again. Say thank you to that energy for being there. You're totally welcome. I'm not here to fight you or argue with you. If I haven't been listening in the past, I'm sorry. I'm listening now. And then just kind of bring your attention back to the surroundings. And when you're ready, just open your eyes. That's how you do it. Works every time. Some things may reoccur, but if the energy is always met with acceptance and love, it's transformative. It'll either tell you why it's there and then dissolve back into the emptiness out of which it came, or it'll just dissolve. It's up to the energy itself to tell you what it needs to tell you. We don't need our minds for this. That's a little example of inner reconciliation. We don't need our minds for this. The energy system, which is consciousness made manifest is quite capable of telling us whatever it needs to tell us. So, speaking of inner reconciliation, I am still planning on doing that course on the chakras. So, by all means, join me. I hope you'll join me. It's going to be a 10-week intensive where we're going to do a lot of exercises like I just did. So let me just http://chakras-gp. That's the link. That will take you there. And I'm just going to be doing this for 10 weeks. It's not. It is fundamentally non-dual, but I'm going to take you through the chakras into the pure non-duality. Very progressive path for those who are not quite ready to jump right in. But even those of you who are familiar with the non-dual conversation can benefit enormously from this kind of an internal examination of the internal landscape of the energy system. So let's see, Sophia. Let me know how that's happening for you, Sophia. Just keep doing it. Iran Weaver, does uncovering and trying to heal old wounds have a place, or does this always reinforce the idea of a separate self and keep you going in circles? Yes and no. It has a place, but not as a intentional activity. Maybe you heard what I just did with Sophie. That's how I do it. Yes, old wounds and stuff may need to come to the surface. Old trauma energy may have to be released, right? If we say that it must, then we go on the witch hunt and we try to get it. And of course, when we're trying to release it, there's an aggressiveness in that. There's an aggressiveness in self-help and personal development. That aggressiveness actually puts your nervous system into deeper defense, which is why it doesn't work very well. But if you just recognize, just be willing to be with every feeling you have, it will lead you to a trauma if need be. I remember working with a guy a while ago. He was part of a startup company, and he got really screwed. And it was just by a dumbass thing. The entrepreneur who started it was just making bad mistakes, and he ended up getting hurt by it. But the pain he was feeling was way out of line with the actual experience. It was annoying. It was a bit of a hardship. It wasn't disastrous, but the feelings he was having were totally like it was his whole life had ended. He was feeling to me. He was angry. And so when he came to me, he recognized that something was up. And so I just went through it a little bit. Similar kind of thing, just being with that. And then once, because I will use EFT to help release traumas. And I said, okay, what I want you to do is I just want you to kind of hold that feeling there for a second and just tap on your collarbone point for a moment or two. And as he tapped on the collarbone point, all of a sudden he found himself sitting in the principal's office with his parents. He's in kindergarten. He's just been given the news that he's being held back from first grade because he's too short. Now, he's a very smart guy, but he was too short. They wanted to hold him back. His parents didn't defend him. He felt completely alone, isolated, demeaned, diminished. He was humiliated. He had to be, he was the oldest kid. He was in kindergarten again, right? It lingered with him throughout, till he got older, and eventually it kind of just fell into the background. And the moment he saw it, it was like suddenly this weight came off of his shoulders. It's like, oh, they really did throw me under the bus. they did. That actually did happen. That energy's been here, and it's gone now. And the whole thing just vanished. Now, I didn't lead him. I didn't do past life regression. I didn't hypnotize him. I didn't analyze it. I just said, let's go into this feeling and see what happens. Boom, up it came. That's how I approach it. If you start thinking you have to uncover this stuff, you put a pressure on yourself that the nervous system is actually counterproductive. It'll react in defense. It'll push you away. And believe me, it's a lot better at pushing you away than you are at getting in. It knows all your moves. It is perfectly defended at every corner. So it's a waste of time. So I go in via love. I go, you feel whatever you're feeling. If you need to tell me something, tell me. If you don't, fine. It's very therapeutic. And that opens up the door, actually, to a lessening of resistance for the kind of deep inquiry that the non-dual inquiry into the separate self actually requires. Because there's a lot of resistance to that. That separate self has been a key part of the defensive mechanism when you truly understand it. I'll be in that class because I'll be explaining it in great depth. But that's where it draws its power from. It's connected up with the defensive mechanism of the nervous system, which is essential to life. Right? So, yes, if you're trying to do that, you will reinforce the separate self. But if you realize that the separate self is simply a projection on these kinds of energies, you just be with the energies and they'll reveal themselves to you if need be. And if not, they won't. They'll just disappear. In which case, you don't really care how that happens, as long as that, that energy that's not serving you anymore is no longer active in the system. So thanks for that, Aaron. Suketa says, thank you for the response. Are synchronicities, same numbers appearing, messages from songs, movies, etc., are of the ego mind? Okay. Yes and no. I hope you guys don't tire of me always splitting hairs, but when you can see how easy it is for meanings to be mistaken, I just feel like I have to be very, very precise. When you ask a question like that, it's kind of like this underlying assumption that the ego mind is a thing that is giving you information, false or true, right? Mostly false. Right? There is no such thing as an ego. It's not a thing. Like there's no such thing as a mind. There's only thoughts. Thoughts in total, we give the process of thinking, and the process of thinking is simply the appearance of a stream of thoughts, right? We give the name of mind to the stream of thoughts. So the mind isn't a thing that is thinking. It is simply a word to designate the stream of thoughts that we call thinking. It's not even actually thinking. It's simply a stream of thoughts. Right? Now, a certain chunk of those thoughts, actually, the preponderance of those thoughts, refer to a thought, I. That I is the ego. Now, it's a thought. There's no ego, but the thoughts that refer to an I are the functioning of a particular flow of the thought. That's the ego, a subset of mind. Right? So the sense of a separate self is a thought projected upon the natural flow of thoughts that just happens in life. Now, if you see it that way, then life can be filled with all sorts of mysterious little hints. And yes, I don't know. I have a friend of mine always sees 1111, right? You look it up online, go to Google, and it's an angel number, and it represents good things are going to happen. I don't know if any of that's true, but I do know that the consciousness has more ways of expressing itself and communicating with itself than just words, right? Serendipitous things, insights, sudden things happen. I know one person who they were in a bookstore. just kind of walking out. There was nobody else in the bookstore. I guess it was a big, some other place, but they were all alone in this area. There's nobody around him. And they're standing there they're looking at one book on the shelf, and a book above falls on their head. Now, there was nobody there. There's nobody on the other side pushing it. The book just fell on her head. She said, I think I should read this book. And so she did. And it was actually an enormous amount of good information that it was a teaching that lasted her for about 3 or 4 more years. And then she outgrew that and went on to the next thing. So, you don't know. You don't know how these things work. I only read one book by Wayne Dyer. Right? I never quite got into him. Right? Nothing against him. I just never, he just didn't resonate with me. One book I decided to read. The book was Your Sacred Self. Right? I didn't actually even finish the book. But I was reading through the book, and it was interesting. And he made this one quote from Nisargadatta Maharaj. I'd never heard that word before. I had no idea who he was. And I don't remember what the quote was, right? But those words just stuck in my head. It was about 3 months later that I was in the East West bookstore in Manhattan, and I'm wandering up and down the aisles. It's a spiritual bookstore. They got all sorts of books, and this book jumps out. It literally didn't jump, but all of a sudden it caught my attention. On the spine it says, I am that. And I reach up and I pick it up and I look at it. Conversations with Nisargadatta Maharaj. I read it. 1,000 times I read it. I read it. It was the open door to the whole Advaita Vedanta tradition. Prior to that, I had very little knowledge of it. So yes, but here's the thing. What happens when somebody sees 1111 or, a particular phrase from a song strikes you or something in a movie, we tend to the mind wants to jump in and tell you what it means, right? So go to Google and find out the angel numbers for 1111 or 333 or something like that, right? That's the mind. That's the ego trying to usurp it. That's trying to project something on it. If it's really a message, go to the source of the message. Don't try to interpret it yourself. Go to it and say, does this mean something to me? Is there some reason why I'm seeing this number all the time? Or this thing has a certain resonance with me? And just keep it. Just like the word Nisargadatta. Right? I couldn't even pronounce it, at the time. That whole book. I didn't read much of the book after I put it away. But that stuck in my head. And months later, something caught the corner of my eye. It was actually my left eye. I can picture myself walking down. It was such a momentous time. It was up on the shelf about this high. It's yellow and black. It didn't even have his name on the side. It was just drawn to that book. So yes, the analytical, psychological, egoic mind will keep you running in circles, trying to give its interpretation, because it's always going to interpret things according to this false sense of I. To actually see life as it is to see life, let life communicate to you on its terms. Tell you what it means. You don't have to make it up. You don't have to assume. Just like I did with talking to Aaron about looking for the traumas. You don't have to do that. You don't have to look for the meaning. Just open yourself to it. That the meaning's coming to you, but it's coming from the source of the meaning, not a secondhand interpretation. That's the direct experience of wisdom, and that's how it manifests itself as that kind of knowing. So, getting towards the end here. Let's see. Dave said, excellent explanation. Thanks again. You're welcome. Ava says, isn't attention the consciousness and subject-object relationship? No, it's not. Again, there's nothing inherent in a subject with the intention. You can have attention without a subject, right? I am aware of attention. Right? The attention can be aware of the subject and the object. Right? So consciousness, keep it simple, right? What you are experiencing right now and every single moment is consciousness. That's all there is. So let's not try to analyze it too much. The subject-object split disappears when you realize that what you are experiencing is consciousness. Right? Consciousness aware of itself. And the manifest form is consciousness simply perceiving itself. Like at night when you dream, in the dream, it seems like there's a subject-object relationship between between you and the people that you're with. When you come out of the dream, you realize there was no subject-object relationship. It was all subject. It was the ultimate absolute subject. And there was all the characters were me. Right? So from there, the subject-object relationship falls apart. I don't have a subject-object relationship with the image of myself. Right? It is all consciousness. Right now, all you're experiencing is consciousness. So just welcome it as consciousness. Give it no credence as something that exists independently of consciousness, that somehow consciousness is perceiving. It is only perceiving itself. That's the true I. And that's the true I in relationship with the true I. And you have the true I as unmanifest and the true I manifest, and the two are one. So let's just keep it that simple. Richard Thorpe says, you can't odds it. Think of the song Paul McCartney wrote. I'm not sure what that's a response to. William, oops, jumped around a bit. William says, thank you, always resonates, or GP always resonates like a temple bell. Thank you. Shalom, me lover. Shalom, me lover. Shalom, Richard. Let's see. That's good on this thing, not string, yes. Okay, well. Awareness. Can energy in the body be felt as a vibration? Yeah, that's all it is, right? Energy, vibration, those are the words that we have for it. What it is, in essence, is consciousness, right? So vibration, we tend to think of vibration or energy as kind of a physical thing, and that's how people see it. But that's not what it is. That's a false concept of it. That's a projection of material external existence to something. What it is consciousness. Consciousness manifest is what we call energy or vibration. And you can see it as different frequencies of vibration make different things. Slower frequency makes red light, and faster frequency makes violet light. Slower frequency gives the illusion of solidity, and higher frequencies, it's much more fluid, and others it's gaseous, and on and on and on it goes. It's all a matter of vibration. What's actually vibrating, right? Well, it's consciousness. So it's not a thing vibrating. It's very mysterious, and you get it to the non-duality of it. It is very easy to. It's impossible for the mind to grasp it because it goes beyond anything the mind can possibly know. Because all their just a second, this one guy is just, I'm going to have to get rid of him. He's just kind of jabbering on the remove. Thank you. Okay. So when we're thinking of it as consciousness, there's this tendency for us to want to try to envision somehow what consciousness is. That's what I talked about Atmananda, trying to meditate and to visualize pure consciousness. That's what he was trying to do, and he kept getting disturbed by the sounds of the traffic sounds outside of his apartment, until he realized that was consciousness, which he said, come. You're what I'm looking for, right? So it is consciousness. It has been mistakenly labeled as a physical particle or wave vibrating. But that's not what it is. It's consciousness. It's totally mysterious. How is that which has no attributes create an infinite number of attributes? This is the essential mystery that you cannot know through the mind. You can only know it because you are it. That's how you know it. You become it. Well, you don't become it. You realize that that's what you've always been. So what you are seeing is yourself, not the sense of the self as an individual person. The individual person is a manifestation of the infinite consciousness which you are. So coming back in something else. Report. Just ignore them. Let's see. I wanted to remove all of them, and it didn't. Let's see. Here's a timeout. That'll work. That helps a lot, says Aaron. Thank you. You're welcome. Let's see. Suketa, this is how I discovered you. You popped up on YouTube like the book falling on my head. Synchronicity. And I see 144 all the time. Is it just too weird? But somehow it feels nice. Good. Just stay with the feeling, right? If there's information there, it'll be delivered. Otherwise, maybe it's just there to make you feel nice, right? To remind you you're not alone, right? It can be a very simple message. And it's okay. What was the book? Conversations with. The book is I Am That. Nisargadatta Maharaj. Just look up I Am That. It's very famous. It's available free in a lot of places as a PDF. You can just download it. You can get it in some bookstores, but it's kind of hard to come by. And oftentimes, if you actually buy the book, it's very expensive because it's out of print. So you can get it free as a PDF. It's not available on Kindle, but so it can be gotten. So just look for I Am That. It's one of the handful of books that I recommend. It's a classic. Thank you, G, for your answer, says Eva. Much blessing. Sophie says, thank you. There was a softening as you directed my attention to loving presence. Yes. Love heals everything, Sophie. It's so simple. It's so simple. Sarah Sands, that was wonderful. Thank you, G. Have a great weekend, everybody. Love. Liz says namaste. And I think I've run out of the queue. Awareness says thank you. Yes. Only 13 minutes over, and I have completed all the questions for this week. So, again, let me invite you to my class. I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's also, these classes is also how I support doing this, commercial free and cheap, because I pay for everything myself. So if you can be in this class, it'll help me as much as it helps you. So again, just gpwalsh.com/chakras-gp, and it'll take you to the page where you can register. Aside from the fact that helping me, I took up teaching the chakras because I found it was a model, a teaching device that I could use that would really help bridge the gap between self-help and some of the esoteric stuff and crystals and that sort of thing, and eventually to see the nature of life as consciousness. And I found it was the way I taught it, the way it came to me to teach it, actually fulfilled that. it answered a lot of the questions about how to deal with traumatic material coming up and the like. And so while the teaching of the chakras is just like any other teaching, it'll be something you outgrow and you don't need it anymore. I don't use it for me personally anymore. But I teach it still because it's such a valuable tool. And, that's kind of what teachers are in the business of, coming up with new tools, new techniques, new ways of teaching, because consciousness is constantly evolving. I read some books that I used to read a long time ago, and the language is even arcane, right? Language is changing, the metaphors are changing. So spiritual teaching has to keep up. And so if I can dive into the past and bring up a model like the chakras that everybody is familiar with, and kind of put a little secret sauce on them and make them different, it's worth it. And so I do it. So that's why I'll be doing it. And I even recommend it for people who are on the non-dual path, with questions about how to deal with the stuff that's coming up, how to understand the energy of life. So again, hope you join me, gpwalsh.com/chakras-gp. Should be great. Somewhere in this, here is a direct link to it. So hope you guys will join me. Okay. Thank you from Dave, and thank you from Infinity Coaching and Awareness, and John Sheehan, and everyone else. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. Until next week, I love you all. Namaste.